And hello, everyone. Welcome to a new Energy Crew podcast. I'm excited to be here this morning. I'm excited to bring the person that we're having on as a guest to the forefront. Rory and I have been friends, coworkers, colleagues, whatever you want to call it, teammate. I don't know what you want to call it because you're such a driving force for Crew Club and Exec Crew, the two crews that we have. It's so great, obviously talking to you throughout the weeks and all this stuff, sharing ideas, sharing creative ideas, and kind of like using you as a kind of soundboard, not just that as a motivation point, but now we're actually going to have you on the podcast. We're excited about. But before we do, this podcast is brought to you by Exec Crew. Rather than me talk about the Mastermind Executive Development Program, that we not just have mastermind groups, we also have corporate development. We're going to play a little video for y'all. Here we go. See, it's kind of funny. It's like you got everyone probably listening on Spotify or Apple being like, okay, why not just listen to about 45 seconds of that EDM? But if you watch this on YouTube, you find Energy Crew on YouTube. There's actually a little video we put together that showcases what Exec Crew is, what to expect as a member, and all that fun stuff. So, Rory, how are you, buddy?
You got me hyped up with that video, man.
Dude, I know. You got to get hyped up, man. It gets energy going. So, Rory, we're recording this. I'm in Houston or Fulshire right now outside of Houston, and you're up in Canada, correct?
Absolutely. In nice and warm Montreal, -5.
So, for those that don't know, Rory is the marketing coordinator over at Midnight Marketing, probably the latest and greatest, the best marketing company out there. Very creative, great at storytelling, great at just kind of what y'all do. And I noticed, I guess my introduction to y'all was I've known Tim since pretty much the pandemic. And I remember he came on my first podcast, and him and I kind of hit it off. It was the start of Midnight, and he was really kind of just like, it was really just great, like just talking to him kind of about, business and kind of like the creative space. Like I love marketing. My background's in marketing. And, it's been to see kind of him build a team and kind of build a vision. Because as you said before we started recording this, execution is always better than planning. And to see him execute and see y'all execute has been great. And Rory, you came in my life probably, I don't know, 8 months ago, 9, something like that. It's been a whirlwind, but what you've done, and you and the team, and Sarah and Bella, everyone over at Midnight Marketing, not just what I've seen for what it's done to Exec Crew, Crew Club, but what you see to other cats out there too, like other customers you have that I'm not going to talk about, but you've seen their stuff if you're out there. But man, I'm just digging your stuff. So why don't you kind of give us this is your first podcast, so man, don't worry about it. It's just you and me talking right now. I always get nervous before these things too. But why don't you kick us off, man? Why don't you give us a little background, kind of a little life tale about Rory and kind of how you find yourself where you're at today.
Oh, that's a big question, JP.
I know. Like, what do you hit the high notes? Like, how much you get?
What's your life story? So I grew up in Manchester. For anyone who doesn't know, it's not only the greatest city in the world, but a city in the northwest of England. So
okay, yeah, I studied Lancaster a little bit.
Yeah, we have a family connection there. My dad is from Lancaster. So
okay, look at that.
Little connection there. So I grew up in England. First 21 years of my life. Day after I graduated from university, I got on a one-way ticket to Canada, and I've been here for the past 5 years.
What was the decision behind that? Why Canada? If you chose a place, would you do it in Canada again?
So, it's kind of a random decision. A lot of people ask me like, what the hell are you doing thousands of miles away from home? But I always wanted to travel and have different perspective and just challenge myself to just kind of start from scratch and just take the opportunities of living in a different country. And honestly, it's been a huge challenge, tearing your life away somewhat and just starting again from scratch. But I've had a huge amount of growth over the past 5 years on taking that jump and taking that challenge. So I'm grateful for taking that leap to be where I am today.
So when you're taking this leap and you're kind of getting into a culture, a country that you're really kind of plucking yourself into the middle of it and all stuff, what kind of, I mean, lessons have you learned, I guess, when it comes to kind of betting on yourself and challenging yourself and kind of like getting uncomfortable? I mean, because it's been 5 years.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just, constantly being willing to experiment and try new things. And it's kind of these culmination of failures that brings you forward. And I think that is one of the biggest things that I found has benefited me, just having this wealth of experiences that have got me to where I am today. And that I don't think I would have had the same wealth of perspectives if I stayed, in my hometown where the bubble of.
Would you call wealth of perspective? I mean, I would kind of say, like, listen, from what our previous conversation wouldn't tell me now, it seems like you kind of like you really kind of like a better term, blossomed. You know what I mean? Like once you get uncomfortable, once you're on your own and trying to figure your own shit out, like it's like you're kind of blossoming. You know what I mean? For lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think growth happens when you go outside of your zone of comfort.
Yeah,
it's very easy to stay in the comfortable, stay in the place where you grew up in, your friends, family. But oftentimes there's a ceiling to that. You can't constantly grow and evolve if you're stuck in the same place.
Right.
I think that's one of the competitive advantages of throwing yourself into the unknown and the uncomfortable, whether that's starting a company or picking up, packing your bags and moving to a different country. I think always having an open mind and just knowing that these decisions are going to snowball and benefit you in the future.
So I completely agree. I remember there was a couple of times, in my career life, it's like you kind of pick your head up, you're like, where the hell am I? Like, how did I get here? But every decision you make and you pick your head up, you're like, how the hell did I get here? It's always beneficial, like looking back. I mean, you're always learning something, whenever it's a tough time or kind of an uncomfortable time. I kind of want to dive into listen, whenever I talk to you, it's always like it's refreshing. Like you have such a unique creative mindset. Can you talk to me, I guess, kind of like how you fell into marketing, kind of how you started pursuing marketing and kind of what aspect of it do you really dig? And then I kind of want to get into kind of the other public perspective of marketing. But what brought you into the marketing world and what do you dig about it?
I think what's amazing about marketing is it has so many different faces. You have, video, websites, like it's just so wide and diverse. And personally, I just love the creative side of things. So constantly being able to, create content and just constantly improve on that side of things is something I love about working within marketing. And to answer the second part of your question, how I fell into it, I have a bit of a family background. My dad works in marketing. So as a kid, I would always be overhearing his conversations and just like taking notes and listening. And I think also it's the human aspect of it, storytelling, connecting with people.
Okay.
And it all comes down to communication. Like marketing is all about storytelling and communication. If you can effectively tell your story and communicate and connect with people, you're going to be successful. And that's what it all comes down to.
So that's a big human portion of it. I mean, you see all this AI technology software coming out that I think it just improves and helps people's creative space. I don't think it takes the creative space. So when it comes to this, I mean, you're talking about the storytelling, the communicating, the connection when it comes to people. I mean, that's a very human aspect of marketing that I think a lot of people don't understand. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a huge misconception within marketing, especially within B2B marketing, that, you have to have this corporate, face on. But I think there's a lot of things you can learn from B2C. And, having a human aspect to your marketing is just going to connect with so many more people, even if the life cycles and the sales cycles are much longer. I think even more so, it's more important to connect on an emotional level. And how do you do that? You do that through storytelling and, not just pushing a product in front of a customer, because there's only so much you can sell a product without, completely alienating your your whole entire customer base. So I
Right.
think starting from a point of, what is the problem that we're solving? What are the pain points of our audience and our customers? How can we connect to their emotions and desires, and then create content around those pillars? That's what it all
What do
comes
you
down.
what do you see a big, I guess, a big misstep? I mean, because I'm thinking about like marketing right now. I'm thinking about like there's so many people that fall in this trap of like, okay, well, we got to put something that's about our product out. We got to put something that's about we're selling this thing. We got to sell this. We got to put this out. We got to put this out. Where do you see the biggest, I guess, areas of opportunity for people out there that have the traditional mindset of marketing, where it's like we got to promote a product? How do you want to? How can we disprove, I guess, these common misconceptions about marketing and storytelling?
I think
What is storytelling?
I think that's a great question, because if, like the example you just said, you pushed just a product in my face. If
Right.
Apple just pushed a product, it would not be the company it is today. It all comes down to selling, going back to your idea of fever, like what is the feeling associated with your brand? There's a huge distinction between brand and product. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is they try and push a product in their customer's face. And through that, you're not creating a brand. You're creating a product that, there's a million different competitors out there.
Talk to me about the difference between that, because I think there's so many people out there that hear brand, they hear branding, they hear personal branding, they hear storytelling, and all that stuff. Like, I would love kind of like a brief, like 30,000 foot view on kind of why these are so important. Why is storytelling? What is storytelling about a brand? Why is it so crucial to connect?
I think a great example that I always like to go back to is companies like Nike or Red Bull. Everyone has a feeling that they all know that is associated with those brands. Like Nike associates inspiration, and you see these athletes achieving their goals. Red Bull, extreme sports and danger. And I think brand all comes down to like having a feeling that people can connect to, because essentially that's what all marketing and branding comes down to, is building community around a product. Because if you just look strictly on the product side, people aren't going to care. People aren't going to care about it. And there's so many other products out there that are exactly the same. So you're not standing out from the crowd. And that's where the storytelling comes in, that can set you apart completely from your competitors.
Who's some of your like inspiration? I mean, you're a very creative individual. I know that you have. I feel like you have some inspiration when it comes to like these stories, these brands. The fever, the marketing behind it. Like, who's some I guess some inspirations that you kind of like.
Well,
you jive to.
For the fever, it's got to be JP Warren for.
If anyone you can't just say that because you're on the podcast. Give me some other stuff. Come on, give me some real stuff. If anyone
has heard the fever episode for JP, I highly recommend you going back to that, because that's a marketing masterclass that I think anybody who's in marketing and wants to learn about marketing should know about fever. But
I appreciate that.
For me, I find a lot of inspiration just from the people I follow on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is an amazing platform to just constantly grow and find new ideas. I find so many new ideas and perspectives on LinkedIn, and you always find the people who manage to grow furthest are the people who tell personal stories. And I think that's something I really am inspired by. I'm very, very much inspired by storytelling.
I've seen a lot of your stuff too, which is what I think is, I'm not sure. I'm just thinking about this now, so I want to touch on this. What I love about your stuff too is like you bring in other perspectives that are outside the industry, that are outside of the traditional things that are in my feed. You know what I mean? You bring in these other podcasts or these other whether it's a tech company or like some entrepreneur that has a great story. You bring in other ideas from other industries, from other personalities, other diverse backgrounds, and it's such a cool way. It's like, holy shit, I didn't even think about communicating it this way. I think I'm inspired by the fact that you're bringing in other ingredients that are outside kind of the normal feed that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think for me, the reason I post content personally, like I had a huge kind of imposter syndrome only when I first started, pressing post and thinking like, who the hell cares about what I have to say? But the whole kind of purpose of it for me is to kind of distill all of the information and content that I consume, because I don't want to be a consumer. I want to be a creator of content. I don't want to just, we're kind of bombarded with information these days, like not only within our work, but, going home and scrolling social media, and it can become kind of like a toxic cycle of overconsumption. But for me, there's a lot of great value and information out there, but having the ability to distill it down to its like core idea, and then create an engaging piece of content out of that other people can read and gain value from, that's kind of my whole goal and mission of creating content.
Okay, so I feel like when it comes to like this stuff, y'all have taught me a lot. I feel like there's color, there's simplicity, there's bold messaging, how do you, that seems like such a fun, creative side of things. Like, okay, so like, how do you stay, number one, on the cutting edge when it comes to like all these trends and all that stuff? So how do you follow all these trends and still stay different if these are trends that are becoming popular? Does that make sense? So carousels came out, like, and they say, no, I see that y'all are pushing carousels, not just in your platform, but you're also helping out, Crew Club and all that stuff, and Exec Crew. And it's like, okay, now carousels are big, but then next thing you know, it's going to be something else. So how are y'all staying on top of like what's like trending and still staying relevant, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's a challenge within marketing. Things are moving such a speed that it's very hard for you to stay on the front edge, and you need to constantly be leaning in and experimenting to stay on top of things. And I think that is the key. Experimentation is the key, not only to growth, but to staying on top of having the data to compare, what does a carousel perform like versus a static image or a video. It all comes down to just experimenting with different content formats and not being one-dimensional, and keep testing and using the data to drive the decisions that you make.
One thing that's interesting, I'll spend a lot of time creating content just because it's something I like to do. I know that, midnight marketing has been a huge savior when it comes to, branding, storytelling, consistent branding, which to me is obviously it's a big challenge I have. But what's interesting is you're like, hey, JP, like start doing some more like just regular, like candid shot pictures. Like don't edit them. Like don't put any, logos on them like that. Like put some genuine stuff out there. And like next thing I know, like I started doing that, and then they started performing so much better and all that stuff. So talk to me about that side. Like why is that so interesting? Why the genuine like snapshots work more impressions and people connect with them more than it would be like a manufactured, I guess, piece of content.
Yeah, I think when you go back to it, if you think about LinkedIn, primarily it's a social platform, and authenticity sells. So when you show that unfiltered raw image, the authentic real image behind these brands, it's really refreshing, and people really engage and love to see that. Especially on platforms like LinkedIn, when you see so many companies' content out there, it's really refreshing just to see a real, true image that is unfiltered and the mask taken off it. So I think it's incredibly important for companies to not only humanize themselves, but to have that balance where, like I said, you're not constantly just pushing a product in front of your audience face. Although it is sometimes, important to do that when the time is right, but also having that personal touch and human aspect.
Do you feel like there's companies that are very hesitant about showing off that human side of things or telling the story? They want to have this traditional like product content, product this, product that. Do you see kind of that those conversations changing to people being more open to these storytelling, personal side of things? Because I feel like I don't know why, but there's like, I think this was like, y'all's big push. I think this, back, during COVID, you see the genuine side of things, but there's also this corporate mindset of like, nope, we're not pushing people. We're not telling a story. We have to stay in this box. We have to stay in this realm. Like, is that changing? Do you see it? And
I think we're moving in the right direction, but there's always going to be resistance at the start, and it's uncomfortable. I I know you feel the exact same way, same as me. Like I hate putting my face out there sometimes, and it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. You have to show the people behind the organization, or
Yeah.
you're not going to connect with people if you don't. It's as simple as that.
So what's the okay? So when it comes to like storytelling, like, what's your process? Like, if someone comes to you, let's say a new company comes to your way and all that stuff, they kind of want you to, hey, look, I need more. Walk me through the process that goes on in Roy and your team's thing when someone does come to you, say, hey, look, I really need help with, and who would come to you to Roy of who needs help?
Yeah. So I think the most important first step that we have is just listening to what are the pain points of a new customer that we're talking to, what are the problems of their audience. And I think once you have that understanding of who's the audience that we're speaking to, what are their problems, what ways can we connect with them, and then you can build the stories of your products and your companies around those pain points, because essentially we want to grow and take our clients' marketing to the next level, but we don't want to exhaust their audience by constantly pushing a product in front of them.
Yeah, that's what I feel like I do sometimes. But shit, I mean, sometimes I feel like I have to. So when it comes to, I guess, people coming to you and all stuff, and they're sitting around the table, how much control? I mean, I would assume that there's people have to trust their marketing group. They have to trust a third party, quote, a third party marketing team and all that stuff. What makes the magic recipe for you when it comes to, I guess, the company's control of the marketing story and all that stuff? I mean, what's the magic secret sauce?
I think it all comes down to communication, having, open communication between whether it's myself, the marketing coordinator, and the client point of contact, and then being able to translate what their goals and ambitions are with their marketing from a storytelling first principle, and then translating that with our creative team. And then we can execute on the idea and bring their story to life, essentially.
What's a big hurdle that people have? Like, what's something that you commonly hear? You're like, oh my gosh, like if only they would understand this, like what's a big hurdle that people have when it comes to, I guess, pursuing this, relinquishing the control of the creative space?
I think it's the barrier of authenticity. It's something that is always going to be incredibly successful, but it's at the same time it's incredibly uncomfortable to start off with. But I think just to kind of like come outside of the shell and be willing to be more authentic and share more. Podcast, for example, is a growing content format. Clients appearing on a podcast, and you can break down that piece of content.
Oh yeah, okay.
Long form piece of content into a short form clip, a carousel. Just being open, I think, is essential, and it's really the key to keep growing your story.
So we talked about the whole process of storytelling. When I'm hearing, let's say I'm in my car listening to this, and I have either startup or something like that. Talk me through what is, like, if I'm hearing this, okay, what the hell is storytelling? What story do I have to tell? Like, what story do I have to tell? What story does anyone have to tell out there when it comes to their company?
Well, going back to storytelling, I think there's a huge amount of data out there about the impact of storytelling versus, if I'm just pushing a product and data in someone's face. Like the power of storytelling is that it connects on an emotional level, but also because of that, scientifically, it's proven to enhance memory as well. It's going to make your message and your company at the end of the day more memorable.
Okay.
So just having that in mind and understanding that your story is not all about you, it's about your audience, I think is incredibly important to have.
What do you mean? Dive into that little nugget right there. That was some juicy knowledge right there.
So what I mean by that is when you tell a story, if you make the story completely about you, which is something completely unrelatable and your audience can't relate with it, it's not going to be memorable and it's not going to have a lasting impact. But when you tell a story that your audience can relate to because it appeals to their emotions and desires, it's going to be 100% more memorable. And that's something companies can leverage if they're really listening to their customers and their customers' pain points and delivering content around that ultimately solves a problem.
Where do you see the evolution of content when it comes to marketing? I mean, is it? Where do you see it? I mean, how much do the AI, the AI software tools or whatever that come into play? How much is it going to be targeted? How much is it going to be? So where are some, I guess, some stuff that you're seeing on the forefront that's making you geek out a little bit?
I'm very excited. I'm not sure if you've heard about Sora. It's the new text to video. It's essentially ChatGPT but for video. So I could write a prompt, dinosaur on a
smoking a cigarette on a ski lift, and it'll show it. Yeah.
And then a few seconds later, same like Midjourney, you'll have an image like that. But I think one of the problems I see right now is there's so much AI generated content out there that it's kind of a turn off when you see, you can really tell when content is AI generated versus it's been written by a real human.
Yeah.
And I think having the ability to distinguish yourself and actually write within your own tone of voice is going to set you apart. So I think at the end of the day, these AI tools are a product to help us increase our efficiency, but you can't totally rely on them for creativity.
We were talking about that last night. We had an exec crew dinner last night. We were talking about, kind of AI, writing, whether it's emails to whatever and all that stuff. It's like, it's kind of one of these things these days where it's like, you kind of have to have some shitty grammar in there, have some poor grammar, some bad punctuation. So it's like, it's a human that did this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless you want to prompt it. So, I mean, that's a thing too. It's like, I feel like when it comes to, there's so many different AI tools out there, not just to help creativity and all that stuff, but I feel like it's like, unless you know how to use them properly, like when it comes to the props, when it comes to the new storytelling video thing, it's such a huge, I don't know. It seems like a big landscape where it's kind of intimidating to kind of get involved. But you're right. I think you go break it down to it, bring it back to the personal level. Use AI to kind of streamline things a little bit, but it's not going to take away the creative side, the personal side of your brand or story.
I'm not worried about that just yet, but at the same time, you do have to think that this is only about a year or two into the technology. So who knows where we're going to be at in 5 to 10 years time. But personally, I'm very excited about the opportunities because so far since the introduction of these AI tools, it has enhanced, my ability to do creative work tenfold. So I'm excited for now, but at the same time, I have a wary eye for the future.
Would you rather have, I think everyone's got a wary eye in the future. That's not just you. Would you rather have ultimate freedom on a project or ultimate budget on a project? Ooh, right?
Can I have a
question?
Can I have both?
No, you can't have both. I mean, what would be more important to you? I mean, would it be kind of like having the resources to or would it be having the freedom to kind of try to do stuff out? What kind of gets you going?
I think freedom at the end of the day is always going to win because you can have all the budget in the world, but if you don't have the freedom to completely explore the creative pathways, you see a lot of big corporate companies with huge advertising spend creating content that is just complete garbage. So I think if you don't have the ability to be agile and explore, I don't think I would much have the ability of freedom rather than budget.
So how much of your, so you've been doing, how long have you been doing marketing?
Oh, I would probably say just over 3 years.
Okay, so you've been doing it for 3 years. So a lot of progress in 3 years. So let me ask you a question. Is this one of those things where you can just kind of study trends, that the shit that works, or is this something where you actually kind of dive into books or podcasts? Where do you get your academic knowledge when it comes to, marketing?
It's funny. I studied an arts degree. I'm actually a history graduate. So
Okay.
everything I've done has kind of led me towards the path of marketing. You know, the skill of writing, the skill of communication. I spent a couple of years as a teacher as well, working within hospitality. But I think going back to your question, it all comes down to. Sorry, can you cut that out? I forgot the question.
Oh no, we're not cutting it in. I'm not an editor. Hold on. The question was this: like, where do you get, like, for example, like I graduated marketing. Okay, I didn't use marketing until like 20 years after I graduated. You know, and it wasn't because like, oh shit, I remember this and this was in my class. No, it was more like, hey, this is kind of cool. I'm gonna try to emulate this. Oh, I see this. This is a good idea. So where do you get your, I guess, whenever you are kind of putting your creative space in it, or the science behind kind of telling a story? Is this just kind of like you're a student of the world, where it's kind of like whether there's, you know, social media, whether it's kind of podcasts you consume to get ideas or inspiration, or is it kind of like Professor Daniel's Marketing 101 book?
I think, you know, the whole academic side of things is so outdated. You know, you see a marketing curriculum that is probably still being taught in universities, and you know, these whole concepts are kind of,
it's like SWOT analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, they're obsolete at this point. I think it's way more important to be on top of like what is actually working in the here and now. So,
yeah.
But the amazing thing about it is, you know, it's almost very toxic in a way because it's hard to switch off. But luckily, I'm very passionate about creating creative work. But you see inspiration in all kinds of places, whether you're just watching a movie, watching a TV series, and you find, or like a movie trailer, you find like an interesting hook in there, and trying to apply that to another principle that you're doing in your own work, or whether it's listening to a podcast, consuming content on LinkedIn, Twitter. Like there's so many sources of information out there to take inspiration from. But I think having that kind of analytical eye where you're constantly breaking things down and thinking like, how do they do this? How can I try and emulate this and create a new formula out of this to apply to my own work?
Well, that's what you showed me one time, and I thought it was very interesting. Like, hey, watch this. I think it was like an Apple, like how Apple advertised or something like that. It was like, watch this. And it was very like 3 words on a slide, very simple, very like minimum colors. Like it was like, but I'm like, wait, this is like the largest company in the world that has like the most like technology. I'm surprised like their stuff is like, oh, you get this in this in this. It's very simple. It's very feeling, story, kind of expectations on what to have when you do purchase an Apple phone. It wasn't a lot of detail. Like this camera is 16.8 megapixel, whatever, or runtime, this micro speed processor. It was very simple. It was very like, this is it. Like I thought just showed me that, and it kind of changed how I kind of pursued things as well. My idea about communicating what Crew Club or Exec Crew does.
Honestly, man, I love just a very clear, simplistic, you know, sticky headline or piece of copy on a very simplistic graphic. As long as the design is clear, as in, you know, your brand guidelines. I think sometimes people overcomplicate it. You know,
yes.
The main part is, you know, having a message that people are going to remember, and that of course goes back to storytelling. But you know, being really clear on what are your values, what are the benefits, and what is the value that you're bringing to the table.
Dude, I think honestly, like that is such an under focused or under discussed side of things. You know, people talk about cost, they talk about this. I think talking about and communicating value and just like injecting whatever you're doing with so much value, that's going to be how you create that experience for the customer. You know, it's not going to be about cost. It's not going to be about I think focus on that value. Like, and also I think a cool exercise out there to do is reframing. You know, how often are we reframing our value? You know, like, hey, you're doing this way. I think the power of reframing kind of what you're there to do is a great way to tell your story in a different light. You know, just like Bill in California. Yeah.
It gives you an outside perspective. Like, you know, sometimes showing a piece of content to fresh eyes, to someone who's not seen it before, and getting their opinion on like, what does this make you feel?
Yeah.
And then, you know, constantly evolving, because there's nothing worse than, you know, content that doesn't evolve. But I think having a clear idea of what is your message and how can I break this down and keep telling it in new and novel ways and constantly repurpose to make sure that my message is going to stick.
You've got a very interesting crossroads. I mean, we're talking about, you know, the data, you know, like, oh, if you post this, the data is there to back it up. But you're also saying, how does this make you feel? I mean, that's a tough thing to navigate the data behind something, but also the products or the brand's feeling about something, right? Like, how do you measure? I mean, how do you compare or fill those buckets of data versus feeling, which is an intangible, soft emotion? It's an emotion. You can't really.
Yeah. Sometimes the most like absurd aspects of what your brand is the thing that people are going to remember. So like you said, it's very hard. It's very hard to, you know, like a company avatar, you know, sometimes it's completely ridiculous, but it's what people, you know, the McDonald's M, you see that a mile away, you know, it's kind of these absurdities that make you more memorable. They're very hard to quantify with numbers or data, but it goes back to feelings and emotions. But still, you know, you have to have a balance and still be backed by data to some extent, as well as appealing to emotions and storytelling. And I think with data, it all comes back to experimentation and just constantly testing and trying new forms of content, new ideas, and just measuring them against each other, see what performs and why, breaking down why did this post perform well? What were the principles that we can apply in a new way to get an even bigger impact?
All right, so let me ask you a question. We're coming up on about 40 minutes right now. We had some good conversation. What is in store for Rory? What's, you know, you've been doing this, you know, you've had, you know, been in Canada for 5 years, been in the marketing world for 3 and all that stuff, blowing and going at midnight marketing, crushing stuff. What's in your future? Like, what's in your vision board for Rory the next, you know, 5-10 years? What does that look like? And listen, let's pretend it's at midnight marketing. Let's pretend it's not midnight marketing. Like, I'm just kind of curious. Is it creating more content? Is it obviously there's some projects going on that we don't have to discuss. We can tease on, but this is your first podcast. Wink, wink. Which I'm excited about. Other podcasts, wink, wink. But what does the future look like for you a little bit? Like, what's driving, kind of getting you excited? Like, who are you in 5 years?
That is a great question, man. Sometimes every day I look at myself in the mirror and ask myself, who am I today? But I'm very excited. You know, just the journey I'm on. I'm very much still a work in progress, but I'm just grateful to be, you know, learning and keep trying to improve every single day. I'm surrounded by an amazing team of incredibly creative individuals at Midnight.
Right.
And, you know, we're constantly on a mission to evolve as well. And not only that, same with myself, you know, constantly learning and trying to apply this to the stuff that I'm doing every day. So honestly, man, I'm very excited on where the future lies for Rory.
What would Rory teach a masterclass on? Listen, I deal with imposter syndrome. You deal with it. What would Rory teach a masterclass on in 3 years?
I mean, there's so many different facets to marketing, but honestly, my love is for storytelling. So
okay.
I'm constantly, like I said, I'm on a mission to keep elevating my knowledge on storytelling, and hopefully I can provide some value and help other people learn from that, from my experience as well.
Can you do me a favor? I guess, you know, if I'm sitting here and I'm here and I'm listening in my car, storytelling. If you don't mind, talk to me about whether it's Crew Club or Exec Crew, when you came in and we had that first conversation about storytelling and what was actually done. So pretty much give us a real world example on how you came in, how Midnight Marketing, Rory came in and the team came in, you know, Bella, Sarah, and all that stuff, and how you applied storytelling to Exec Crew. Or, yeah, let's use Exec Crew for example.
Yeah, I think Exec Crew is a great example, because what you guys are doing are you're solving a problem. So we started off, what's the problem with exec crew? What is the whole purpose of exec crew? Is to connect leaders and founders together. So, okay, we have the problem that we're solving. Okay, how can we tell that story in 10 different ways that can appeal to our target audience?
Okay.
So from that point, what is the value in a connection? Why is it important in this digital age where, a lot of connections are, kind of superficial, LinkedIn, these huge conferences and industry events that aren't targeted and focused? How can we appeal to that pain point and tell a story that shows how important genuine connections are? Whether that's in the energy industry or whatever, like the whole value of having these tight-knit connections within your industry and a diverse perspective of leaders to help you navigate your career and your choices and your decisions. So I think, what really helped is me and you, JP, having that open discourse on like what is the real problem that exec crew is solving, and how can we tell that story in 10 different ways and keep evolving the narrative through different formats, whether that's a video, carousel, a website, whatever that is.
So I love that, because and literally you just kind of summed up everything we just talked about. Number one, you talked about being authentic. Like, what is the real issue here? You talked about solving problems. I don't know why it thumbs up like this. See, AI like thumb me up right now. I don't know why. So anyway, yeah, I guess so. Thanks, AI. But I mean, you're talking about listening, solving problems. What is the problem? But also, what's the solution? How do we tell that story? 5, 10 different times through different media, through different content. You're talking about reframing things. How to reframe our story for the audience? Because if I'm up here saying, "Oh, it's an executive development program, Rory. It's an executive development program, Rory," so it's like, okay, well, who gives a shit? Like, why is it important for people to engage in this? Oh, it's connections. What can improve with connections? So it really is, as you said, communicating, provide the solution, talk about the problem, having a vision, communicating your value, and reframing things. So you just kind of summed up everything, kind of our whole entire conversation with that. But again, I mean, coming from my perspective, the fact is when y'all came in, y'all started telling me like, "Hey, listen, we have to tell this story." And it's like, that just completely like, I just like was missing the forest for the trees. I was like, that's the great way to frame it. I loved how y'all did that. So yeah, that's just a real world example on the power of storytelling and what it's done for exec crew. So what else you got for us? How are you gonna leave us? What are you focused on? What are you digging? What are you digging in your time off away from the office? Like, what do you get into? Me, we're a gaming family, so I'm kicking ass in the VR world, taking people out. What are you doing?
Honestly, do you know what? I think as a creative person, sometimes it's so important to just completely switch off, go on a walk. A lot of my best creative ideas come to me in the strangest places.
Yeah.
Even in the shower, like it's true. There's so many studies out there that having that time to just completely reset, relax, take it easy, when you're off the daily grind of creating content and work is so important. And that's something that I really try to do when I'm outside of, the rise and grind of the daily.
I love that, man. I mean, I completely love that, because you're right. I mean, it's such a hustle and go culture. And like, let's say I get off this, I'm gonna hop on my phone and get more some dopamine in my like. I love the concept of like just like detach a little bit and have your brain kind of get bored so it gets creative.
Yeah, even going to the gym, no headphones, and having to deal with
no headphones. That's savage move.
Having to deal with your own dark thoughts for a while is very important, just to reframe and reset. Creativity and boredom are interconnected, so it's incredibly important to switch off sometimes and just reset and then go again.
Well, man, I always dig talking to you, man. I appreciate your time coming on Energy Crew Podcast, and you crushed it for your first. I'm actually shocked it's your first podcast. You crushed it. But hey, everyone, this is Rory Nolan out there, the marketing coordinator at Midnight Marketing, who's been such a vital. I'm not just saying that because we're sitting here with each other, but you and your team have been such a crucial part on kind of like just like helping my sanity, helping with the message, helping with, again, the story behind what's going on. It's just so easy because, my heads are as a business owner, my heads are in the weeds. Like, oh, I got to communicate this. But that's not the story. That's not the brand. Those are little things that are, important, but not crucial. So I want to thank you for your time, Roy. I want to thank, hope you have a great weekend and all that stuff. I appreciate what you and the team at Midnight Marketing does. But, man, unless you got anything for us, you can find Rory on LinkedIn. How else can people contact you? Is that probably the best, safest way is LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn, or you can check out Midnight Marketing's website. Check out Midnight Marketing on LinkedIn. You might see a funny TikTok meme that Bella has made of me against my will.
Okay, I'm sure it is, dude. That's also kind of exciting for you too. It's like, I mean, first off, I think working at a creative marketing company, like, dude, when I got out of college, like, I went to like 17 different creative marketing companies to like apply there. So the fact that you're actually working at a creative marketing, but also it's such a young, fun, creative company too. That seems like it's like just a cool little situation you got yourself in.
Yeah, it's a great place to be around, and it's an incredibly creative environment, like, especially when everyone's here in office and we're all together brainstorming, just bouncing ideas off each other. And yeah, I'm excited to see where this team is headed.
I dig that, man. That's so awesome. It's gonna be cool too, also seeing like in like 10, 15 years, whenever like, naturally people go, like, just kind of seeing just like what the team that started at Midnight Marketing, kind of where it's gonna go. I love it. So yeah, I dig it.
I'm excited, man.
Well, everyone, I want to thank you too. Wait, what you got? You gonna close this out? What you got?
I was just gonna say thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on the Energy Crew podcast.
I'm sure it is. Well, thanks out there, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon. Rory, you be good, man. You have a good one.